Hello, everyone. Just wanted to do a little video and talk a little bit about a recording I just did. I figured I'd start doing some of these, um, digging into some tracks and stuff, see if that is interesting to anyone. Talk a little bit about what I'm doing on some of the recordings that I do. Maybe you guys can take something away from that. This is a song by Chloe Fredericks. It's gonna be coming out later this month, so definitely check it out. It's called Pink Cotton Candy Clouds, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I did on the guitar parts. So yeah, let's take a little listen to what they ended up being, and then we can kind of work back from there. And you can see it split into two parts. Basically, that's just going from one mono guitar to a stereo guitar. I know it's bounced to stereo, but that's just because I had it all in one track. And you'll hear the split. I'll play it kind of leading up to the split into stereo, so you can hear how that kind of opens up what is the chorus section. Here you go. So yeah, that's the guitars. You can hear that kind of split out into stereo in the chorus. It goes back to mono for this bridge section here. So, and at the end, just a little trick to kind of open it up and add some dynamics to those sections. But yeah, and I'm treating them pretty similarly, but there's some subtle differences just because with the mono, it's sort of stacked with her voice on top of it. So I did some stuff. We'll get into that. I'll start with what I did on this mono guitar. So basically, here's it without any of the effects. It's a cool guitar sound, and it's played by Jack DeMeo, and it's a Gibson J45. It's a vintage. I don't know what year. I think it's a J45. I don't know. Maybe he'll correct me on that. But it's a old guitar, really like dark and warm and nice. Awesome sound. And yeah, basically I was just trying to accentuate that. And kind of just fit it in there. But here's what I'm starting with. I usually like to start with, getting rid of any frequencies that are bugging me, and usually with most things that aren't kick drum and bass, that's gonna have something to do with getting rid of some low end. So you can see here I have low high pass at about 76. Usually what I do with this, which is cool about the Pro Q, is you can isolate the bands and hear what you're cutting out or boosting. So with this one, I just kind of dragged it until I felt like I was losing something out of the tone, and then that's usually where I'll stop, and you can play around with it, but I'll play it and kind of isolate that band so you can hear what's being taken out. You may not be able to hear that much, especially on a phone, but there is stuff going on in there, and it just kind of tightens it up. On this one, I may have actually, let's see. No, I kept them about the same on both, but sometimes, when other instruments come in, you might pull it up. This song starts with just acoustic guitar and vocal. So sometimes with that, and I did later on add some more low end on this mono guitar than there are on these stereo ones. But basically, it's playing as a bed to the vocal, and since it's the only other thing in there, it can take a little more low end, and then when things like the kick drum or the bass come in, you take a little bit of that out, leave some room. But I also have a little boost here at 400, and that was, again, just sort of giving it some of that low mid that is helping it provide that bed for the vocal. Here's what that sounds like. So just some of that, and then right here around 1K, I took some out. There's sort of like a weird, like, kind of sound that I wanted to get rid of, and so that's what this sounds like. And that's just something I'll tend to do first, just kind of sweep through and see if there's any sounds, any spots in the sound that are sort of annoying, and then, you know, always A/B it with the bypass and make sure you're not removing anything that's providing tonal quality, or, you know, not taking too much away. I try not to go too crazy with that. It's easy to, especially if you have a narrow queue, you can easily find any spots that might bug you. But if you take too much away, you're going to lose the sound. Anyways, that's the start. And then the next thing is I just have this dynamic EQ. And all I'm really doing with this is I'm actually getting a little bit of that 1K back, with a little bit of dynamic response. And then I'm ducking a couple of spots up here in the upper range, which is basically containing some of the pick scrape sound. And that's common for acoustic guitars if the mic is pretty up close on it. So I'll show you what that sounds like. And I didn't want to lose all of that high end. I only wanted it to engage when the strumming really kind of over exaggerates that frequency range. So that's why I'm using a dynamic EQ instead of doing that up here in the Pro Q, because I don't want it to darken too much, especially since it's already a relatively dark sounding acoustic guitar. So that's just kind of tapping it when it gets a little too hot. And you can see in these controls here, you can set a threshold and sort of kind of dial it in to taste, you know, how much you want that to duck out. It's helpful because it evens it out a bit, especially if you're getting too much of that noise. It kind of evens it out so you can get a little more of the sound at the lower registers, lower frequency ranges. And yeah, that's basically it. So that's just stuff. That stuff's more surgical or more sort of corrective. And then later on, we start getting into stuff that I'm actually adding to the sound. So the first thing I have here is a L2, and that's just sort of evening everything out. And it's adding a little bit of gain, so you'll hear it get louder at this point. As far as, you know, overall gain, I don't think too hard about whether I'm adding too much. Sometimes I'll make sure that I'm gain matching, because you don't want to start adding level and thinking that you're making it sound better, but you're just making it louder. But, you know, if something is adding level and I don't mind it, it doesn't bother me. But all I'm really doing with this is just a little bit of limiting, just to give it some evenness and to sort of lift it up a little bit. You'll hear that here. So it just kind of helps when, you know, in between strums as it's ringing out, it just sort of holds. and that just kind of helps it be that bed for the vocal in the final track. The next thing is this Summit EQ. I really like this thing. I've been using it a lot lately. It's a 4-band EQ. It's got a lot of good controls in it, and it sounds really nice. It sounds really smooth, especially in the high end stuff. It really just brings the highs out without harshening it in any way, which is nice. But basically, I'll show you what I got going on before and after here. So again, there's a little bit of level boost, but I don't mind that because it's boosting in the places that I want it to. For this, I have a little bit of this 4K, just like a tiny bit of that. Some more of that 1K, but this is, like I said, sort of smoother and softer. And then 820. So this is basically giving it that body that I was talking about, that I wanted it to have in order to sit under the vocal. And I'll just kind of pull that up and down so you can hear what that is doing. So it's just that low mid in a nice spot. It's pretty broad. This bandwidth control is how you control what the cue looks like. And so it's a little bit on the wider side, slightly, and it sounds nice and gives it a little bit of character. And then some 100 as well, kind of doing the same thing, helping with that low end. And I'll do the same with this band here. So yeah, same thing, just kind of giving it some of that low end. And it's cool. I actually decided to use it as a bell instead of a shelf. It's kind of cool. You can change that in and out. But basically, I felt like the shelf was giving it too much boominess. So I wanted it to be more specifically at 100 and not, everything below. So that's what I'm doing there. After that, it's just sort of color out of this tape emulator. I'm actually a huge fan of this thing just right out the box. So oftentimes I don't change the settings at all. I just kind of put it on. It sounds really nice. Just giving it some color. So you'll hear that. And that's super subtle, but it's just giving it a little bit of attitude. And then at the end here, I'm just dipping it in a couple of spots where I'd like the primary focus to be the vocal. So I have the vocal kind of bumped a little here, and I have some high end stuff going on in the vocal. So this sort of gets it out of the way in case, because I've been lifting with these last few plugins. Lifting level in a couple of places, and I just want to make sure that I'm leaving that bed for the vocal to sit over it. So you'll hear what that sounds like. So another pretty subtle one, but in the context with the vocal, it helps out a little bit. I'll go through the same thing. Most of these settings in the stereo are similar. I'll kind of pull it back and pull it back in just so you can hear what that sounds like. So yeah, I'm there doing the same kind of cut at 1K, boost at 400, high pass, Dynamic EQ's doing the same thing here. L2's doing the same thing. A little bit less just because I didn't need it to be as present in this chorus, especially because there's two of them going on now, and there's other instruments happening at this point. Some EQ. The only real differences are that I sort of bumped up the low end to 180 instead of 100, just so that boost is not happening in a frequency range that I would like to be occupied by the kick drum and the bass that's going to come in. So I kind of lifted it a hair compared to where this first guitar, this solo guitar is. And then I have, the same boost at 820, same boost at 1K, and then same little thing here at 4.7. So I'll put that in and out. So yeah, a lot of that is just mid-range information, giving it some of that, bringing out some of that tone of the ringing. So this same thing here, same color. This J37. And then this one, I just kind of tossed it through this SSL compressor. Just a little bit of extra color. I don't even think it's hitting the threshold at all. But it just kind of added a little bit of vibe that worked for me in context. So here's with and without that. So another really subtle one, you might not even really hear much of a difference if it's on phone speakers or something. But in context, it was adding a lot, or a little bit of energy and attitude. Just something to think about. You don't always need to be using these types of emulators to necessarily, perform a task. Sometimes just having the color, especially if your recording process is pretty digital, can at least kind of provide an emulation of some of these hardware pieces, which they do a pretty good job of on a lot of these emulators these days. So yeah, that's basically it on those guitars. I guess I can. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have my sends here. I'll go through my sends really quick. Basically, I've got a couple of different reverbs and a parallel compression. So the parallel compression is just a 76. It's compressing decently. It's not crazy, but as you can see, it's getting about -5. But this is just sort of to lift the dynamic floor. That's sort of like the purpose of parallel compression generally. I have it mixed in pretty light, so it's not doing anything too crazy. But it just kind of, again, helps even it out, lifts that dynamic floor, and helps with some presence. I'll take it in and out. So yeah, just a little bit of body, a little bit of evening. The next thing I have here is this awesome plugin. It's Altiverb. It's a good convolution reverb. A lot of good impulse responses. The emulation that I'm using here is this EMT 140, which is a plate reverb. It's like a old plate, and I have it on a dry setting, so it's not like the big washy version. which I do actually have going on this pedal steel guitar, but this is just kind of giving it a little bit of depth, and I'll take that in and out so you can hear that as well. I'll also raise it so you can kind of hear it if it were kind of exaggerated. So, a lot of times these little subtle moves, when you stack them up, it can really add a lot without it being too obvious. I tend to like making things sound pretty natural and not overly processed, and doing these little incremental steps helps, so you can still make it sound modern without it feeling hyper processed on a track like this, especially where it's all acoustic instruments, and the purpose is for it to kind of sound like a folk pop track. The last send is this Valhalla reverb, doing a tiled room. It just kind of added some shine to it. I really just kind of was sifting around in the presets and found something that worked for me, and then I just kind of dialed it in to work. But this is with and without that. So yeah, it's more ambience, more space, just a little bit brighter than the EMT. So yeah, this is my process on these acoustic guitars. I'm really putting this all together, and I would like to start doing more of these videos just to share with people what I'm doing on some of my projects. I think it's really awesome to be able to have conversations on these online platforms and share what everyone's doing with their productions and their music and stuff. I also never feel like my process is necessarily the end all be all, so I always love hearing feedback. I like to put this out there and let people discuss it, and definitely let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, or if you have any anything you'd like to hear from me as far as what I'm doing with my work and my production work. And yeah, I just want to have a conversation with y'all. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more of this, and thank you guys for watching. Also, don't forget to check the song when it comes out, Chloe Fredericks. The song's called Pink Cotton Candy Clouds. It'll be coming out on February 28th. I'm super excited. This is the first single of a couple that we'll be putting out over the next few months. So go check that out. Go follow her on Instagram at It's Chloe Fredericks. So yeah, I'll tag her in the post as well. All right.